Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark, the true off-season edition. My name is Kirk Henderson, editor-in-chief of MavsMoneyball.com, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-editor and friend, Josh Bowe. What's going on, Josh?
Nothing much. We're recording a little earlier in the evening than we normally do by about an hour, so yeah. I'm going to count that as a win.
I am
for an off-season. So, but everything's going okay. I know we haven't talked in a while, at least on. I mean, we talk every day, but at least on here.
Yeah, the slow drift into off season really overtook me. Like, I got home from Vegas. We talked once, and then I knew there was a fourth game. Had no idea they played a fifth game. Just none. Just zero. So it's like that Sunday morning, Doyle Rader, our coworker, was basically like, "Hey, so what are we doing tonight for the game?" And I'm like, "Game?
What game?"
And it was particularly amazing coming from Doyle because Doyle just like drifts in and out of Mavericks consciousness every now and again. So it's, you know, they played two Summer League games, rounding out their time in Vegas. They won more games in Vegas than they've won at any point like the past three Summer Leagues. They looked real good. They continued to just field a team of guys that were fun to watch, which really makes, you know, a big difference in signing on to overanalyze this stuff. Because if we're going to be watching basketball and we're going to be reading into it, at least let us read into guys that we're going to see come fall and winter. And what was particularly neat, I'm really glad the Mavericks stuck with this. They just let Dereck Lively and OMax keep playing. And it's a simple thing. But having prospects to watch and seeing things from them is the real way for a person like me, like a true hardcore fan, to get excited this far out from basketball about the regular season. So I know, you know, you were able to catch. I was only able to catch the second half of Game 4. I did not see Game 5 at all. That 8:30 start time was hysterical. I was just like, it's regular season basketball. And yeah, Rockfist in the chat says if they only won that fourth game by 27 points, because they would have advanced in the playoffs instead of going to the consolation bracket. But you know, what did you see in those games that excites you or that you want to talk about?
I mean, winning was kind of fun. I know that doesn't really matter in Summer League, but considering the Mavericks lost 9 out of their last 11 games, to see a team with Mavericks on their jerseys win 4 out of 5 games was a breath of fresh air, I think, for a lot of fans and myself. So that was I just have to acknowledge, you know, 4 wins in 5 games is pretty cool. I think the thing, and then we can get into this a little bit later, but this is just for fun. The last time we talked, someone in our chat was very upset with us on our Jordan Walker takes.
Ooh,
and in the 2 games they played after that podcast, he had phenomenal games. He had 22 on 12 shots against the Hawks, and then he had 21 on 18 shots, a little less efficient, but he was 5 of 11 from 3. He only had 1 turnover combined in the last 2 games, so that was very fun. Like, that was fun. And it was just, the timing was perfect. But I guess the thing for me was outside of Jaden Hardy, who I think was a little disappointing, the guys that everyone wanted to see, that everyone tuned in for, did stuff, like cool stuff that we can either overreact or whatever you want to do, but take with it. It was just fun to see the guys that we tuned in for play really well. Like OMax Prosper, Dereck Lively, Mike Miles, Jordan Walker. Those are all, the guy, those are their 2 first rounders, and then the first 2 guys that they signed as undrafted free agents from this rookie class. And I would say all 4 of them had great summer leagues and had positive contributions. So, like, that's cool, because it doesn't always work like that, and it doesn't always mean things are bad. Jalen Brunson played in 1 summer league and he was terrible. So, like, it doesn't mean
bad. That summer league was bad.
He
couldn't hit all the stuff he hits now.
Yes.
He was taking the same shot. He couldn't hit anything. He shot like 30% from the floor.
Couldn't hit
I remember
a 3 to
being like,
save his
what
life.
happened?
Yeah. And so again, that doesn't really matter. So, like, again, it's more just like entertainment. Like, it's fun to be like, okay, I'm tuning in because I want to see Prosper, I want to see Lively, I want to see these new draft picks, and they did stuff. Like, it kind of felt like our time was rewarded, because if you're watching summer league games, you're in sicko mode, and so to get rewarded with some entertaining basketball. I also thought that Kirk, we've watched a lot of summer league games. You've watched countless ones in person.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see this much scoring in summer league typically. I mean, the Mavericks scored 100 points or more in 3 out of the 5 games, and in 2 straight to close summer league. Like, that doesn't happen a lot, and it happened a lot. Like, they shot well, and there weren't a lot of turnovers. Like, these guys didn't turn the ball over, which was really cool. So I don't know. That's just kind of like my overall take. Like, it was just cool to see the guys that we wanted to see do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting. So just I'm scrolling through and I'm looking for news, because there is like news adjacent to this. Like the guy, the 26-year-old guy out of Houston, Taze Moore, signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Mavericks, which is in practical terms, it doesn't mean very much, but it does mean that, like, kind of the Mavericks he's their guy kind of through training camp. So he's not going to get signed to like another squad for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Braxton Key signed a 2-way with the Denver Nuggets before game 4.
Yep.
And Key hit that he was one of the guys who hit that, didn't he hit the game-winning dunk?
Yeah, yeah, the game-winning putback dunk in the second game, I think, or whichever one the overtime one was. I can't remember.
That's right. Mike Miles signed a 2-way through that process. I can't remember when he did. And so
he signed the 2-way before Summer League started.
Oh, that's right. Why did I think he hadn't gotten one yet? I don't know.
And then Jordan Walker's, I don't know what his contract is. Like, the reporting just says the Mavericks signed Jordan Walker to like a 1-year, like a contract, but I don't know.
Then maybe it is the 2-way. I mean, I would have precisely zero problem with that, because AJ Lawson gets the 3rd one. You send these guys, they play out here in Frisco. Walker had some interesting post-game comments about, just basically making the right play, which, I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for this shit. Like, it's nice to read, to hear. And
he only had one turnover in the last 2 games, so he's like, I mean, he's not bullshitting. He did it.
No, and he did. He was fun. The gentleman who was giving us grief in here is very much of the sort. He wasn't wrong, but like, it's just when a guy doesn't play, we can't really talk a lot about him. And one of the things I found that is so interesting is that, like, the Mavericks never really did get very deep into their bench. They played like the same kind of rotation the whole time, which in summer leagues I've been to before, it was almost like hockey shift changes, which was interesting. I will say, so the last time we talked was July 12th. I realize this is a Wednesday.
Mhm.
On Friday, I went to lunch with one of my old high school teammates, my old high school basketball coach, and then one of the assistants who's now the head coach out at Lovejoy. And we were talking about Lively because, you know, when I was in high school, I played with a 7-footer, really nice guy. But as a 7, like, you know, you see variations of guys when you're this big and you're that young. Sometimes you see guys that are really coordination, balance, strength, all sorts of variations.
Yes.
And one of the things that's really been fun watching Lively, and I think like at first, heading into game 3, I think you and I were both a little like, not like critical, but just, you know, nothing doing for us. But then these last, 3 games, there was a little more pop.
Mhm.
And then something dawned on me, and it was my high school coach who just kind of pointed out the fact that it doesn't look like he's out of position very often. Like one thing we were talking about JaVale McGee. That's what it was. We were talking about JaVale McGee and how often JaVale McGee screws the defense. And I started sort of thinking about that out loud, being like, man, Lively, there hasn't been many times in Summer League where I'm like, wow, he really boofed the assignment and screwed the team with his play. Because his backline center rim protector, you're the last line of defense. And when you make a mistake, it costs the team. Versus when Josh Green makes a mistake on the perimeter, just example, guy blows by him. He's met by the center, by a help defender. But if you as a help defender are constantly out of position the way McGee always has been for an entire career's worth of basketball, it hurts the team even if you're putting up empty calorie stats. And the thing that I've really enjoyed about Lively is that his feet are good. He seems to be trying to make the right play, and he's not killing the defense. Obviously, it's Summer League. But, our guy Matthew Phillips, Mavs Moneyball contributor, is in the chat saying the team defense was infinitely better with Lively on the floor. That is just a fact. And so that sort of small, boring thing is a translatable thing that I can get excited for come regular season if the Mavericks are going to play him 20 minutes a night. C-Max says, when I watch young bigs, I watch their feet. And I did too. And I like his feet. He's not there's a lot of athleticism there, but it was very kind of like restrained. There was no like going nuts in trying to sky for blocks. It was just like and the more he played, the more comfortable he looked. And that just leads me to be excited about the elements of what could happen in the regular season. He's gonna get his ass kicked. Let's make no mistake. But I will feel better. I feel better about that going in because I know that he's the minimization of mistakes is just it's a I don't want to say it's a skill, but it's important in team defense.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, he didn't have a ton of blocks in Summer League. And it was kind of interesting. Like, and that's not a negative in a lot of ways. That's almost more of a positive. I mean, the way that he was able to impact the game defensively without necessarily getting blocks, because you would think Summer League is usually the time that these guys want to kind of go all out and make the flashy play. And because, these games don't necessarily matter if they lose, like, no one's really going to beat them up over it. And he still, despite that, like, just like you said, displayed some restraint. There were a few times where he, some of that restraint bit him, and some guys kind of scooted past him and scored at the rim for a layup.
Pushing a little too close.
But it was
a little too much ground.
Right. But and again, that's a mistake. I think I would rather him make that than jumping for a pump fake that he on a shot that he's not going to be able to block, or leaping out of position and giving up an offensive rebound. Like, occasionally you're going to get beat at the rim, even the best defenders get beat at the rim every now and then. What was nice was he was always there. Like, even if he got beat, even if a guard gave him a little trouble at the rim and made a move to get around him, he was at least there, and that's what you kind of talk about, being in position and out of position and chasing blocks and that kind of stuff.
So Lively has a massive standing reach. I want to say it's like 7'7".
Yeah.
So, and then one of the funny things about Dwight Powell is that guy is also in the right spot all the time. It just doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Because he's 6'11" with 6'11" standing reach, high hips, and just the ability to get shoved aside. We're going to see some of that with Lively. But 8 inches, hands up, it just makes a difference. It does.
Yep.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, so I want to pivot to talking about a couple of other guys and a couple of other things. But now that we got some folks in here, I would like to urge you to go ahead and like that stream. Down there at the bottom of the page. If you're watching on YouTube Live right now, it's very helpful to us. If you could also go ahead while you're down there. If you're not already subscribed to the show, subscribe to Pod Maverick. You can also click the bell. It notifies you whenever we go live. We will very rarely do a non-live show. It allows us to skip some steps, frankly, because Josh and I are always kind of working on a tight schedule with our lives. And you know, while I will try to post regularly this summer, we definitely will. I can't, until we get back to regular season, I can't make any real promises. So please subscribe to Pod Maverick. That thing is very helpful to us. And leave comments, all that stuff. I love reading the comments, even the ones that are mean. My favorite was somebody called me fat a while ago, and I was like, not anymore.
There's a lot of things like people can
I used to be.
You're doing great.
Like, come on. I've been phenomenal.
Post your orange 3 times.
Yeah, I can run a 5-minute, 40-second mile. I have a
Kirk
fat
has the
boy
receipts. Yeah.
Anyway, that stuff. I love that stuff. It's just being mean, you know, getting like, I have a 7-year-old. He says mean things to me all the time. The internet's nothing compared to that. All right. So circling back, and I think it's time for I am generally, I saw a Bob Sturm post today that was something about I'm always an optimist, and I just kind of thought about that. It wasn't in reference to anything Maverick related, but I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I am not an optimist. I am at best a pragmatist, and usually kind of shit. Mavs have hurt me too many times. Just have. I've watched, can't even over the past 10 years of doing this, I've watched in the neighborhood of 750 to 800 basketball games, just Dallas Mavericks related. This is obviously going to miss. So it's over that time, you get to be a little bit grumpy. OMax, though, man.
The truth.
This feels real.
Yeah. I think the thing that I tweeted it before was, he's already got a willingness to drive, and his first step is already so good. So much of that he needs to be fixed, is fixable. There's something to be said for having the willingness to put your head down and drive the basketball when you get the ball passed to you on a closeout, that we, quite frankly, haven't seen from a lot of Mavericks perimeter players the last 5 to 6 years.
They were a jump shooting team in the Dirk era. There's been nobody that's done this kind of stuff until Luka came along. Dennis tried. Harrison Barnes kind of shoved his way to the rim. Yeah. But this, man, a lot of what he does simply won't work at first. I don't think so.
He's got some pretty loose crossovers that he'll need to tighten up for sure.
You cannot. Yeah. One thing I'm learning, because I'm watching a lot of youth ball right now, one thing you cannot teach is confidence. You can't do it. Like Josh Green has to basically be internet bullied into taking shots because it's just not his nature. Like he wants to be the connecting play guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know who he reminds me of. Like the first thing that comes to my mind, honestly, is Paul George with like the size and the willingness elements of this, but that feels pretty ridiculous. All I know is that at the moment, and I'm normally a guy that's like, settle fuck down. If you want to go nuts on your OMax predictions, on your OMax hype that you want, like all rookie first team stuff, go with it. I'm not going to argue because I think the Mavericks are going to, like, not only are they going to have to play him, the way he plays, Jason Kidd is going to want to play him.
Yeah, especially with how the roster stands now. He's basically like the only real wing besides Grant Williams, or bigger forward, because Josh Green, I think everyone agrees, is better as a point of attack guard, dribble, ball handlers and stuff like that, because whenever he plays against a guy bigger than him, it doesn't normally work out that well. So I mean, he's going to be thrust into this role just because of the way the rotation looks, unless some sort of trade happens, which I'm remaining a little doubtful that anything major happens between now and training camp. So we'll see. But yeah, his defense, I thought, showed out right away from game one. And then
he whooped Jarris Walker's ass.
He did. Both sides of the floor. I mean,
yes.
He was taking that guy off the dribble. And that's the guy that I think almost universally was like, hey, this is like the most ready-made defensive prospect.
He was the guy I
draft.
desperately hoped fell to Dallas. One of three.
Right. And yeah, he handled him, like both sides of the ball, locked him up. It's encouraging. There's part of me that's like, how much of what is real and what's not with Summer League, and I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, it's fun to just see a guy with the tools and the athleticism, and kind of the maturity level, because he is an older, that's kind of the benefit of having an older. I mean, he's not that old, but getting a junior instead of a freshman, right out of college, I think. He's grown. He's a little more grown, and I think that helps.
So there was a guy, and Glenn in the chat says OMax needs to learn controlled fire, and I think that's a great turn of phrase, because he goes 1,000 miles an hour, and playing with Luka, that's going to work an awful lot, just because the defense is going to be so tuned to him. But given enough time, once he learns a little more control, I'm excited to see what he can do. Yeah. Several summer leagues ago, there was a legend on Dallas Mavericks Summer League team, a gentleman by the name of Ricky Leto. Ricky Leto was not a good basketball player, but he tried to do the stuff that OMax does, like really forcing your way to the rim, forcing your way into the paint. And I mean, to a degree, there's we've seen lots of guys do this over the years, but once you get to this high level of basketball, there's a strength and a size component that will help in a way certain skill just doesn't, because it doesn't, your handles, if you don't have the quickness, that sort of thing, like you're just going to get locked up by certain people. Mike Miles, for as good as I think he was at Summer League, he ran into elements of that where it's just, getting into the paint is hard. Big bodies, athletic bodies. There's just, so watching like the willingness and like the ability to get all the way in there numerous times was neat. I just had a great time watching that.
Yeah, he had a really nice post up against a smaller defender too, like nice little drop step, got a score in the paint. I can't remember which game it was exactly, but yeah, I think everyone knew his defense was probably going to be what gets him on the floor, and it probably still will be what gets him on the floor first. But I think the offense has been a little surprising. And what's surprising is, if you would tell me like, hey, Prosper looked pretty good on offense in Summer League, I'd be like, oh, so did he make all his threes? Like, did he get hot from three? And it's like, no, he didn't really make that many threes. But he attacked the paint with a ferocity that doesn't exist on this Mavericks roster outside of like the main guys for the last couple of years. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I could kind of go on and on about him. I really enjoyed seeing my Twitter timeline hype up about him. And which is weird because I'm just such a curmudgeon, but there's just something, there's a there. And
it's the size, man.
What this free agency and offseason draft, the whole period and why I've been so positive about it, which I think like irks people that are used to me being a grump, that, you know, that let's just say like fellow co-miserables have been sort of bothered by it. But it's just, look, bites at the apple is something we have preached for 5 years. If you have opportunities, sometimes they're going to work out. Like, it's just, that's the real bitch of it. Like, I get that the draft is a crapshoot. I get why Mark Cuban probably doesn't like it. It's just important to have those bites at the apple over time. 2020 really, you know, I can't fault, you know, I fault the Mavs process, and that we know now Donnie Nelson was a crybaby and walked out. Haralabos Voulgaris had to make all the picks, or maybe Haralabos had to make the picks, which is why he walked out. But they still had 3 bites at the apple in 2020. They ended up with Josh Green, not everybody's favorite player at the time, and maybe not until this day, but would probably go top 15 in a redraft. And then 2 players who didn't work out. That's okay, because more often than not, players aren't going to work out, but you still got to try. And so I find myself very delighted by the process, even if it feels very late. Spoil Sport in the chat asks that we please talk about Lively's hands. He rarely fumbled a pass. Yes. Circle back on Lively for a moment. The hands element of this, I talked about it in our previous podcast, but I have no problem repeating myself. I don't think Lively received very many good passes. Because Hardy is not a precise passer, or at least wasn't in this situation. Threw a lot of passes at my man's groin, caught a lot of stuff, I don't remember very many fumbles or boofs. And, you know, after Sagana Diop and Eric Dampier and all the goofy bigs the Mavericks have had over the years, good hands stand out.
Yeah, for sure. What do we used to call Samuel Dallenberg? Pizza hands.
God, pizza hands, Sam Dallenberg. My God.
So, yeah, that's definitely a plus. Weirdly, he was really good. I don't know if I'm crazy, but he was really good at catching passes in traffic. And then sometimes he would, like, the only times I saw him fumble the ball was like going up for a rebound. And I don't know if that was just like, you know, coordination in the air, or, you know, trying to box out, or just like, you know, it's a different scenario. There's a difference in trying to go grab a rebound and catching a pass that's intended for you. So I understand there's some wonkiness there, but it was really nice to see that. Friend of the show, Carter Rodriguez, who does, I'm sorry to interrupt my train of thought, who does does a lot of great work with his Cavs podcast. Yes, I have the office of a serial killer. I'm sorry. I do not dress up the rooms.
Well, we have to. Often. No, this is great. I don't care. We're going to digress for a minute, because that's what summer is. We have the ability. We just don't do it to do virtual backgrounds with this software. And we probably like Josh.
You don't need to.
No, but you could. You could do a ridiculous, truly ridiculous virtual background for every show. You know, we could put you in Baines prison. We could do all sorts of, you know, there we go. See, we got some bricks. Your lovely home. I really like this. We could get funky with it just for fun. I think that's a good idea.
Baines prison.
Man,
good.
so I don't remember what we were talking about.
Lively's hands.
That hands are a big thing. It's nice. You know, I'm going to be interested to see how Luka sets him up. The screening we've already talked about. He did a little better as Summer League went on. Of course, he was he was underground. He was so bad. So I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. We'll see what training camp and a summer of training. And an earlier person in the chat noted just how much he seems to verbally buy into the role, which is pretty interesting. There was also a story, and frankly, I knew none of this. There was a story in the Washington Post that my friend Ben Golliver wrote about Lively's life to this point, just some of the tragedy and things he's dealt with his father's passing and his mother's cancer. I think it was.
Yeah.
And it frames him in a light that I had yet to consider, because I didn't really know much about him. And so when you think about a guy who's coming to play professional basketball with the chances that he's had, and also kind of just living kind of the life that he's had. And I think it's just I really think it's quite the combination, and the sky is the limit for him at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't wait to see him play some preseason minutes with Luka or Kyrie, and just see what that looks like, getting some passes. I wanted to talk about Mike Miles. He was the guy that kind of surprised me.
Sure, let's go.
Because again, I'm not a college guy. I just don't watch college ball enough. And when his name kind of flashed, whenever they signed him, like it was like an hour after the draft or a half hour after the draft ended.
Work. They drafted like they did the opposite after Bain, where they had been going to his games like crazy.
Yeah, so that was really fun, and everyone. We talked to the same draft people. They all liked him. Didn't know if he's going to make it, but they all were like, we like this guy. We like his game. We like the way he plays the game and kind of the way he sees the floor and just kind of his demeanor on the court. And what noticed me is I'm not trying to critique Jaden Hardy too much, but I noticed that Miles, I think, got to the rim a little cleaner than Hardy did. And I think Miles might be a little bit of a step ahead in terms of, despite being a smaller guard, just kind of knowing the angles and having the ball skills to maneuver around defenders when he gets into the paint. He had a handful of nice finishes where he's driving at the rim and he hasn't beaten his defender, and he just kind of scoops under them and kind of does a little finger roll underneath the defender's arms and kind of slips by them. And I was like, that's great, because for a player his size, he has to know that to how to do that, or he's not going to have a shot. So it was really cool to see him play and not rely on his jumper. I thought his finishing at the basket was pretty impressive for a guy his size. And I thought that's normally where you expect guys to struggle, right out the gate, players of his archetype.
Well, and frankly, it's not just a struggle. Like guys that are that archetype and that size, there are very, you go look, you can kind of, guys that are a certain height, it's like 6'2" and under, there just aren't very many people that shoot at the rim above 50% that are that size, period. It's just, it's a real skill. I get all kinds of great DMs during games. And someone, I'm not going to say who it was, but was during one of the Mike Miles good performances, was like, all right, let's trade Jaden Hardy right now. I'm ready for the Mike Miles experience in that position, which let's simmer because I really like.
You sure that DM wasn't for me?
Yeah, we got a message. We got a tweet the other game where it's like, you guys are being really hard on Hardy, and that certainly wasn't our intent. I think that the role that the Mavericks have with Hardy, which is essentially playing the third guard where he gets to shoot, slash, and not be a big time decision maker, is a good role for him. This was an opportunity to see if he could do more. And I think it's not unfair to say that this summer league, he did not show out. That doesn't mean he's bad. It just means that he's specific. I watched Dwight Powell get the green light at Summer League in his second or third year, and all he did was shoot threes, and I wanted to die because Dwight Powell cannot shoot threes. It's okay. That's what Summer League's for. It's for experimentation. It's why I was so mad that the Mavericks never put Josh Green in it and never asked him to play, because it's you got to play. You got to play. Yeah. C-Max says Hardy lives on his athleticism. It's an interesting kind of athleticism, though, because during Summer League, he could not get separation.
Yeah, he had zero separation.
And that's just with the ball handling stuff. Because again, I don't think his handle's great, and his passing is not precise. So guys are gonna ride him. But you get these ISO situations, cutting and basically moving with 2 power dribbles into the lane. He's gonna be fine, because he obviously was fine with the Mavericks. He had a great last 20 games with the Mavericks.
Right, and and to give him some credit, he does look like he spent the offseason working on his body.
Oh,
there's a dramatic difference in how he looked in Summer League compared to training camp last year.
Yeah. So big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Regarian says he's got to be sick of getting packed at the rim. Yeah, he probably does, but he doesn't have that kind of athleticism to get to the rim. That's just sort of what I've learned. It's okay. He will do better when Kyrie and Luka are on the floor. It's just, when you're doing this from a team building perspective and what kind of lineups you're running out, unless he can defend at a high level, we're only going to see him with certain kinds of lineups. And people are going to be clamoring for him to play. But right now, the Mavericks' 3 best players, like, let's just assume you consider Hardy like one of the Mavs' top 5 players, which I think it's a fine position to have. A lot of, like, 4 of the 5 Mavs' best players are all guards.
Yeah.
there's only so many guard minutes to go around.
Right. So yeah. And that's why I kept thinking there's going to be a trade before training camp. But at this point, I just don't know.
That's a great opportunity to pivot because Mark Stein had out that what was it? That there's sort of he's heard reports of like discussions of a 3-team trade potentially involving Tim Hardaway and which Hawks player? What's wrong with me?
Capella.
Clint Capella and the 3rd team, and it seems like I don't know if it's still active. I don't know. I've not done any research. I'm kind of talking off the cuff here. That sort of trade feels like a staring contest where it's who wants to move first, because the Hawks like Capella, but they want to get their younger big man more minutes immediately. The Mavericks probably want to move Hardy, but they don't want to give up anything extra. Not Hardy, Hardaway.
Yeah.
So it's like something's got to give for all this to work out. And right now there's nothing to give. It's off season. So unless someone wakes up one morning and like the Hawks are ostensibly ran by the owner's like 28-year-old son, like seriously, like he plays a big, like he's, the stuff
him
that
and Landry Fields.
He's the stuff that he's like the stuff that I always accuse Mark Cuban of doing. He's like literally doing. So I just don't see any movement there. Like this sort of team that the Mavericks have right now, where you're going to be able to play some small ball. Grant Williams, the 5. Grant Williams play 3, 4, 5. Like, I don't know if it really matters to a certain extent, just like where you are on the floor. I like this Mavericks team as is. If there's a lot of people that are out there wondering, okay, what else could they do? I think there's some things that could happen, but I don't think they're gonna. As of right now, I just get the sense that they're done.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's difficult is, obviously everyone wants, like, it's like a drug. You want the next move. A move happens and you're like, that was awesome. When's the next hit? Like, I want another move. So I understand that part of it. Fans are just anxious. They want to just see what's coming next. But again, like, how many years of, they can't fix 5 years of roster building mistakes in one summer, especially a summer where, they kind of walked into it with their arm tied behind their back in terms of their maneuverability. So, the fact that they were able to get 2 players in the first round of the draft with their, they turned the 10th pick into 2 first-round players. They were able to sign Seth Curry to a deal that, every time I listen to a podcast, a national podcast, they're kind of like, why did Seth Curry sign for that little? Like, so they obviously did some good work there. Exum seems like to be a really nice deal, a nice flyer for like,
Gamble.
Just perfect for what they're doing for that spot. And then they trade for Grant Williams. They don't even use the MLE. They trade, Reggie Bullock. And I know people probably are going to go a little crazy over the 2030 pick swap, but I don't, I just don't care about it. I know it'll probably be bad when it happens, but my God, I can't think 2 days ahead. I'm not thinking 7 years ahead right now. So they were able to do a lot with very little. So I just don't have much expectation for them to keep, spinning hay into gold. Like, I think it makes sense for them to be like, hey, Hardaway's available. McGee's available for salary purposes if we need to help match salary. But I don't think they have the pressure now that they've done these other moves, the draft picks, Grant Williams, Curry, Exum. There's probably not as much pressure for them to cave in on their stance because they can probably they can talk themselves into this being a successful season with the roster that they have right now. There's so much data from last season that can show, hey, if a couple of things broke our way, we would have won 5, 6, 7, 8 more games.
But they just played Luka. They got to stop treating him like a friggin' fragile, like a Russian doll.
So why would you, if you can talk yourself into that, why would you, for example, throw in second rounders to trade Hardaway, or why would you trade Hardy, or why would you trade Green? Why would you trade the 2027 first when you feel like, what, if nothing else happens, we're going to be okay. So that's probably why the talks have stalled. The desperation definitely isn't there. Now, if they hadn't traded for Grant Williams, maybe would have seen some more action there. Maybe the talks would have heated up a little bit more, but they've kind of done what they wanted to do this summer. So I just don't see them caving right now and giving in to the Hawks' demands and maybe putting in more than they're comfortable with to get, again, a guy that plays a position that the guy they just drafted 12th overall plays. Like, how badly do they need? You want to invest in the center when you just use the 12th pick on one. So,
well, and frankly,
we'll
early in the summer, earlier in kind of the free agency period, like, we were pissy at the concept, because now now that I've seen Lively play, I'm at least more open to it, but I want Lively to get 20 minutes a game. Like, I don't, it was Tim McMahon and Brian Damaris on Tim McMahon's ESPN show, where they weren't like reporting, they were just sort of speaking and saying that they feel, it was either Damaris or Tim that said that wouldn't be surprised if Lively spends a fair amount of time in the first part of the year with the Legends. And I think that's nuts. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched the guy, and granted, this was probably after like one game of Lively, but now I'm just like, I want to see the guy learn on the ground. On the job training is helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. But go ahead.
Especially when you're trading, I think Capella has this season and then another season, and it's like, okay, it's not a one. He's gonna, like, Capella's a guy, if you bring on the team, he's gonna start, and it's like, do you really see the guy you selected 12th to play this position like not have a chance to start for 2 years? Like, he is not. I know he's raw, but I just do not think he's that far away as a prospect that you need.
Now it's what you're asking of him.
Yeah, especially
It's not like you're asking him to run a high post offense. Like, one of the things we haven't even talked about with the guy is he had exquisite passing. Nice short roll.
He's comfortable there for sure.
There's just a lot to be really pleased with him, and I want to see him play. Yeah. Wild concept. Trying to think if there's one more news item that's Mavs adjacent that's ridiculous that I think we could end on. I'm trying to think if there's like anything else that's really worth beating the doors down on. I've not been online in 2 days, which has helped my brain.
I think there was some news about the Mavericks re-engaging with the Bojan Bogdanovic stuff.
Oh, yeah. Tim Cato reported that, where it's like, this is kind of out there, but it's another staring contest.
Yeah, I think that was before they settled with the Spurs and Bullock. Was it that what he reported, that they were going to try to do the Grant Williams trade to make it like a 3-team with Detroit as the third team and maybe get Grant and Bojan and Killian Hayes, and the Mavericks would have traded Hardaway and Bull. I don't know. I can't remember the details right now, but the trade was like Hardaway for Bojan and Killian Hayes, but it didn't work out. Yeah, and the talks kind of broke down. So maybe that's another thing they can revisit. But again, I think if they're going to trade I don't know. Trading Hardaway for Bojan is kind of like he's just a better version of Hardaway, which is kind of fun.
So I think this is a great comment in the chat where Alan says this team's going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Trial by fire is a crazy risk. If it doesn't work, Luka misses the playoffs 2 years in a row in his prime. Couple responses to that. First, I agree, but years of fuckery got them into this position. Years. They messed up the 2019 offseason, the 2020 offseason, and the 2022 offseason. The only offseason they didn't make a mistake that they didn't like things didn't burn was the 2021 offseason where they got Reggie Bullock. And only then, that only worked out when the Mavericks won a ton of games, All-Star break 2021, and then New Year 2022. They went on these incredible streaks, and it's not realistic. The Mavericks, in my opinion, have to get off to a better, more consistent start. You're going to have cold streaks. But the stuff Jason Kidd's done for 2 years in a row, and really going back, it's not really workable for me, where you're experimenting. Like the JaVale McGee thing was a disaster from the opening tip, and it took them 10 games to figure that out. So if they're going to figure this stuff out on the fly, if they're going to be a better team this year, we need to kind of know early. And the way you know early is by trying. They have to try. It is a risk. I'm not going to – I keep kind of like, maybe I'm overpraising because I'm happy that they're doing something in year 5 that they should have done with Luka in year 2. But it's just These are the cards we're dealt. I will say, I think that the awards game minimums is going to change a lot for this Mavericks team. Luka wants to be MVP. He says he doesn't. He says he wants to win a ring. Of course he wants to win a ring. I also think he wants to be the best player in the league.
I think he wants to win everything.
He wants to win everything. Yeah, that's that's a much better way to phrase it. And so when the Mavericks were sitting him out, there was that game in Cleveland, which has the biggest diaspora of Slovenians in the United States. They sat him against Cleveland. That was the game where the Mavericks nearly murdered Kemba Walker on the court. Yeah. They sat him for no fucking good reason because they thought they could steal a game against Cleveland. That shit doesn't happen. The 24-year-old wonderkin is gonna play. And so that in and of itself boosts my confidence in what this team is capable of in a way that the offseason stuff sort of pushes out of my mind. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Because again, they played 50-something clutch games last season, and they lost over half of them.
Yeah.
So those are games where you could, again, there's been some research, not hard research, but there's a prevailing thought among smart NBA people that a lot of clutch results are coin flips in a way. Mm-hmm. Obviously with the Mavericks, there are some real reasons why they lost those clutch games, but you can just hope for some better bounces with the roster that they have. The thing that's tough is trying to balance the objectively good offseason that they had with the fact that they finished 11th in the West last season, and all 10 teams ahead of them did not. I don't think you can look at any of them and be like they got dramatically worse. Maybe you can look at the Clippers. Maybe they're not going to be, maybe you can look at them that be worse, but Denver's still going to be great. Phoenix added Bradley Beal, maybe, regardless of how you feel about the longevity of that core, there's still a lot of firepower there. Memphis, Ja being suspended is going to hurt them a little bit, but they're still good. They traded for Marcus Smart. He's going to be an upgrade over Dylan Brooks. Oklahoma City's getting Chet, and their young guys are going to be better. Minnesota, as much of a tire fire as they looked, they were really hurt by a lot of injuries last season. Yep. I think Anthony Edwards and Cat and Gobert did not play that much together. Yep. And they had a good draft, and I think they've had a decent enough offseason. So there's not a lot of teams you can look at ahead of them that are like, oh yeah, the Mavericks, maybe not the Mavericks are definitely better than. You could probably maybe make the argument, but I don't think you can make the argument oh, that team's going to fall. That team is significantly worse. A lot of the teams in the West that got worse feels like the ones that were already bad to begin with that are below the Mavericks. Portland was already worse than the Mavericks, and they're going to lose Dame, and they're going to be a little worse. But I don't know. I'm looking at the West is just a bear, and I know, we say that every season. It's just trying to quell it's just hard for my brain to handle this was an objectively great offseason, and also the Mavericks might finish 8th through no fault of their own. They might have a good good season, and they might be better than last season, but the West is really good.
No, and Alan pointing that out, thank you, Alan. I do think it's worth kind of tampering, putting our pleased sense of the offseason into perspective with how hard the NBA is absolutely worth doing. It's worth bringing up. I'll just tell you, though, when I think about this offseason compared to what I was thinking in early April when I thought they were going to finish with the 10th best, going to go to the play-in and get rocked, I feel good because if they had lost the draft pick, let's just start from there. There's being uncomfortable about this season now because things are a little bit trepidatious, and then the Mavericks having no ability to do anything other than pay Kyrie a ton of money. That was the only thing they could do. So,
because if they lost the 10th pick, they wouldn't have even been able to do that trade to get to 24 to get Prosper, because they only did that trade because they got a trade exception from trading down from 10.
Yep. So it's that sort of thing. I'm just feeling good. I'm feeling I want to feel good. I want people to enjoy the basketball. When I get on my tirades and kick the shit out of the Mavericks, it's because the Mavericks are what they've done in past off seasons. And this just, it's the nature of our local media around here where everybody, wants to cover a team that's fun. So people buy in. And This year, I feel there's something worth buying in on after the offseason. Like, when you lose Jalen Brunson and sign JaVale McGee and they try to tell you that it's a good thing, it turns me into a fucking psychopath.
Right.
But
right. And now they're going to be
and
like,
that's what
hey,
happened.
yes.
Everybody framed it. It's like, oh, we're going to be fine. Right.
So now it's going to be like, hey, we got Grant Williams. We traded Bullock for Williams, and we're going to be like, okay, yes, that makes sense. I will buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what's tough.
Well, let's wrap it up here. I think I want to ask you a few more things that are completely not even remotely Mavericks related. Have you seen Mission Impossible yet?
I did. I saw it last week.
I don't know when I'm going to see it, and it's only in IMAX for basically the next couple of days.
Yeah, you've got till Thursday,
I don't even know. I might only have till through Wednesday. So it's there's a 10 a.m. showing at what's the fancy Dallas mall?
North
Park, and I'm like, can I figure out 3 hours to disappear from work? Like, how can I do this? I need to do it.
That's what you're gonna have to do.
And so, do you have plans to see Barbenheimer this weekend?
I do. We kind of got off to a late start in buying our tickets because we had a lot of stuff going on this summer, and I just didn't think about it personally. And so we've got our tickets for Barbie on Friday. Daycare parents night out, so that was built in. So we're good to go. So we're going to see Barbie on Friday. We're not seeing Oppenheimer until not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, because I'm a stickler. I'm a big IMAX guy. And if anyone knows, I'm about to get
really 70 millimeter.
Yes, there's only 2 70 millimeter IMAX theaters in the state of Texas. One of them's in San Antonio, and one of them is in Dallas, which is 2 minutes from my house.
And are you going to that one?
Yes, we are. We got tickets.
So I read something on Reddit today, and granted, so just so everybody understands, Josh likes film. I like garbage. I will go see everything, whereas Josh will yell at me about the things I go to see. I read something about 70 millimeter about how it degrades with each use. So it's the first time you see, if you were to see it on opening night versus 5 days later, it would look different because of the way 70 millimeter ages, which I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking forward to both of them.
Yeah.
I have some, I don't know which one I'm going to see first. It's a little bit difficult right now in my house to go out and see movies, but I'm super psyched.
I'm really annoyed. I feel like because this IMAX has existed for a while. This one, it's off. If you live in DFW, it's Webb Chapel on 635. It's been the only legit true IMAX in DFW outside of the Fort Worth Science Museum, but they don't show movies.
They don't show movies. Yeah.
They did once. They showed Dark Knight Rises. I saw Dark Knight Rises at the Fort Worth Natural History Museum in IMAX. It was great. But I'm a big IMAX guy, and I'm a big Nolan guy, and it's always felt like my little secret. It's never been, it's always maybe the first weekend it's hard, but usually I can get, if there's a movie that's made for 70 millimeter IMAX, I can get tickets to that movie Friday night at 10:30 if I have to. I can find ways. Oppenheimer at this theater for the 70 millimeter IMAX, it is almost every showing from when it opens this week till the first week of August.
That's amazing.
Completely sold out. Every show, 10:30 in the morning, completely sold out on a Tuesday. That's I had to look. We managed to luckily to find two seats that were normal, not right in front of the screen. Wednesday, we're going Wednesday at 10:35 in the morning. I took a day off.
Outstanding. Why not? No, man. You got to take.
I feel like something happened. Someone blabbed the secret, because it didn't used to be this hard. This was my little theater. This was my little thing, and now everyone's into it and everyone wants to see it. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if the marketing was better. I don't know. I think there was a radio segment on the ticket that was talking about it that might have.
People are going back to the movies, and it pleases me because I love going to the movies. I take my son. We see just about everything we can. My wife and I decided against making him go see, he loved Top Gun, even though I had no idea what the hell's going on. We decided against making him go to see Mission Impossible because it's funny. It's when we were kids, I'm a little bit older than you. But when we were kids, like I saw Predator 2 in the theaters when I was 7. Like, and if anybody hasn't seen Predator 2, that movie is fucked up.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like the violence. I just didn't want him to get bored. Like there's a lot going on. Like I'm very much looking forward to figuring out how I'm going to see some of these things. And I have to ask you the question I ask you like every 2 months. Have you and your wife started Andor yet?
No, we haven't. I can't. I think I'm going to have to solo. I'm just going to have to start watching it on my own.
I think she'll watch it, and then you'll see how pretty it looks on your big old TV. And
right.
I think what's this?
That's the move. I think.
What's this? I did the only other, and this is not an uncommon recommendation, but my wife and I watched season 2 of The Bear, starring our friend and former editor Tim Cato, and it's such a great. Like 3.5 hours of television. And there's a pair of episodes, this one episode that's very chaotic, followed by this one episode that's really cathartic, and like had me being like, all right, this is why I do it. There's an element of it's episode 7 of The Bear. Anybody that's like listening to the podcast will know this. Like there's an element of that episode that reminds me of like why I like to do this podcast. Because it brings people something that they like. It's not just for me, it's for our listeners. Granted, I think I would do this podcast even if no one listened because I need to talk to somebody about the Mavericks. But there's Brian in the chat says Forks. Forks was just, it reminded me why I wanted to get into an element of providing people content. I know it's like a bit of a weird thing. But it's just, it's like, it's one of the few things that I've watched where I watched it again. It's just so I never watch stuff again because I just don't have time. Other than that, man, I'm playing a shit ton of Diablo, which someone needs to take that thing away from me.
Yeah, that's a health crisis, that game.
This is why I can't go to Vegas. Like I won $80 in gambling on video poker. And I walked away for the rest of the time. And I come home and I'm like basically gambling, playing Diablo.
Right.
Like just directly into my eyeballs. And they're starting a new thing on today's Tuesday. They're starting a new thing on Thursday. Why? I mean, at least they're doing it. Running. Well, at least they're not doing it during basketball season. That's been the real rub for me the past like 6 years is every game I want to play. Yeah, Rhaegar asks Kirk.
Yeah, too bad Starfield comes out.
If I don't podcast for a month, it'll be because of Starfield, or I will start a Starfield podcast. Like I have a real problem with these big open world addiction games.
Starfield is like the game pulled out of your brain.
Oh my god!
It's like the Kirk game.
Well, it's like because I also I always cape for all these weird Apple Plus shows because they're all made. It's like Apple Plus is basically a money laundering service. Yeah. And this show Foundation starring future NBA power forward Lee Pace is just it's like all this. I love all this sci-fi garbage. You just inject it into my eyeballs. I watched Star Trek: The Next Generation with my aunt when I was 6, and I've just been hooked ever since. Well, that's 10 minutes of stuff that nobody cares about but me and you. But I wanted to ask you because if we start doing it in our Mavs Moneyball Slack, we get commandeered by people who have more time than you and I to watch this stuff. So.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know when we're going to be back. I have an idea for a show that I'd like to do, but I also don't know if I want to do the research to put into it. I'll probably host a live show this Friday just because. But our content might be a little bit more sporadic until the World Cup. We will be watching and covering World Cup insofar as we can get the staff to. I know Meta was going to watch some games. She tried to get press coverage, but it was just it's difficult to get for some of these friendlies and things overseas. It's been kind of a challenge. But there's enough basketball going on to where we'll be able to keep talking about this stuff.
All right, that sounds good to me.
Oh, there's our friend Wendell. Wendell in the chat says y'all was talking shit about Jelly after the Pacers game. Wendell, we talked about you and we talked about Joey Walker for like the first 15 minutes of the podcast. So I hope you go back and listen. Thank you so much for tuning in again. We are delighted that he is hopefully going to get one of these contracts with the Mavericks. God, I love doing these live shows. It's great. People are great. We'll be back at some point. Thanks so much for listening, subscribing, and hanging out with us. This has been a delightful show, and go Mavs.